Oh, hey, hi everybody. This is the first episode of the Connoisseur podcast. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Adam.
So basically, you're probably asking, what is the Connoisseur? Basically, it's a podcast where we appreciate everything from comics, movies, music, and everything in between. Each week, we will discuss a new topic that piques our interest. And you can like us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/connoisseurwebshow.
Yeah, so now that you know who we are and what we do, let's get started. This is the Connoisseur.
Okay, so this week we're going to talk about basically Hollywood movies and, that are based on true stories. And does Hollywood have an obligation to follow the facts when creating a film based on a true story? Or how much creative license do they have to change the story? Because it is for entertainment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, we have a ton of movies, that are based on true events. Just a few that have been out lately. There's Argo. I mean, there's a ton that are coming out right now. The Fault in Our Stars is based on kind of a true story. $1 Million Arm, stuff like that. So let's. So what do you think about movies that are based on true stories? Does Hollywood have an obligation to follow the facts to a T, or how much creative license?
Well, for me, it kind of depends. I'm a huge history buff. I love history. So anytime there's a movie that comes out about history, especially if it's something that I enjoy reading about or whatever, it's exciting for me because then it opens up the dialogue of conversation between other people that like history. But then, on the other hand, most of the time the movies get it wrong, and so you tell people what actually happened, and they think that you're wrong because people for some reason believe the movies. And then if it's based on a true story, there's an old saying, something like based on a true story usually means that the movie is less accurate. There's a funnier way of saying this, but basically there's if a movie says it's based on a true story, chances are it isn't, or it's less factual than a movie that just claims to be fiction. I don't know whether that old adage is true, but it seems to be true in a lot of cases. But you got to keep in mind, the movie studios, their job is to entertain us, right? They want to tell their story, and they don't want the facts to necessarily get in the way.
Where do we draw the line between entertainment and representing a true story? Because we've heard, say it's a World War II movie or something like that, or a movie that's portraying people that are alive now, or families of people that are alive now, and the family sees the movie and they hate it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, serial killer movies especially, right? Things like that. I think movies like that are the ones where people are the most vocal about, because you want to be respectful, right? And you don't want to, if you're making a movie about somebody, you don't want to glamorize the killer or whatever, and you want to be respectful to the victims of the family because they have to relive it all over again. And if you're not careful, you can make the killer and stuff look good, and the police and stuff look bad, and that's just insulting.
A good example of that is a movie came out with Shia LaBeouf or LaBeouf or whatever that crazy guy's name is now.
Yeah, he's not famous anymore, apparently.
But came out with about him and his two brothers being bootleggers back in the day.
Oh, yeah. What is that movie called? Yeah, shoot.
But anyways,
the Moonshining Prohibition movie, yeah.
But anyways, family, descendants of the family that the movie was portraying were horrified after they watched the movie because how violent this family was.
Oh,
and said that wasn't true at all. So basically, they just, beefed up the violence.
Good movie, though.
Beefed up the violence for kind of an action-type movie, right?
Yeah.
But the family came away from the movie saying, Jesus, that's not...
I can see that. At first I was like, what are you talking about? Everybody came out awesome in that movie. But then the more I think about the actual movie, the more, yeah, you do have a point. I can see that. Then there's other things too. Forget serial killers or whatever, but even things like, you remember the movie Patch Adams
Yeah.
with Robin Williams? That movie was like not at all true, and the actual Patch Adams has gone on record. Basically, that movie undermined all of his work, and there was a bunch of stuff in that movie that he was horrified when he saw that movie, from what I understand. Like, so even movies that aren't about killers or whatever, you know, you can still really upset the person
Yeah.
if you're not careful.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, just a recent movie, Captain Phillips, came out about the merchant marine ship that was attacked by pirates off the coast of Somalia.
Yeah.
That movie is touting Captain Phillips as a hero, and and quite frankly, from what the crew says, that's not the case.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, well, they were.
I have it here. It says the crew of the ship have sued the Maersk Line and Waterman Steamship Corporation for nearly $50 million, saying that Captain Phillips put their lives in danger by sailing too close to the coast, allowing the pirates to attack.
Yeah, there's actually a map on this. What website is this? History.
Oh, History versus Hollywood, which was when doing research for this show. I found this cool site. It kind of goes in and tells you, you pick a movie that's coming out. It's based on a true story, and it kind of tells you the true story behind it.
Yeah. So anyway, on this page for Captain Phillips, there's actually a map that shows the route that the actual ship took versus the route that they took in the movie, and you can see the one in the movie. The ship's out in international waters.
Well, no.
Almost.
This is the green one is the one they should have taken.
Oh, okay.
The one is the red one is the one that they actually did take.
I misunderstood that. No. I thought it was because it was showing versus the movie to make it look better. But yeah.
But the ship was about 300 miles offshore.
Yeah, well.
When it should have been about 600 miles. But the movie makes Captain Phillips look like a hero, and he saved his crew, which in
it would be like if they made a movie about the the Costa Concordia, that cruise liner that tipped over, and the captain was all like, "Oh, save all the people." Although that one, he's so infamous now, they wouldn't do that. I'm pretty sure, but but it's like a similar idea to that, where Captain Phillips was kind of a sketchy dude.
Well. And, I mean, there's a part in Captain Phillips where Captain Phillips says, if you want to shoot somebody, shoot me. And the true story is Captain Phillips never actually offered up his own life for his crew.
Yeah, no.
So, I mean, there's like that. It's touting him as this hero and, pumping up his image when really should we be looking at him like a hero now?
No, I know, exactly.
Like, these crew members' lives were in danger.
Yeah, one example I was going to use, but then I found out that it's actually a bit of a misnomer, is there's like an urban legend about you remember the movie Fargo, the Coen Brothers movie?
Yeah.
There's an urban legend, but then it's like kind of like the Wizard of Oz, in that there's a lot of legends about it, but they aren't true. But this one is that there's a woman from like
let's preface this. So when the Coen Brothers came out with Fargo,
right? They said it was based on a true story.
Based on a true story. When one of the Coen Brothers has now come out and said basically, no, really.
Well, even on the DVD, there's on the special features, they basically are like, this movie's completely made up. And there's an interview with William H. Macy, and he says that basically at one point he was like, so in the real one, when this happened, he was asking details about the actual case, and the guy's like, oh, it's just a work of fiction. One of the Coen brothers was like, oh, it's not real. Then William H. Macy was like, well, at the beginning of the script, it says that there's a piece of text that's supposed to come up saying it's based on the actual events, and the names and whatever were changed, but the events are true. And he's like, oh, no, we completely made it up. But anyway, so that being said, a lot of people, right up until, until about 10 years after the movie came out, we'll say, thought that the movie was actually based on real events, and that it was, because you watch it, it feels almost like a a very, very strange documentary almost, like, but it's actually completely made up. And there was this story about a woman from like, I think it was
Tokyo.
Tokyo. Yeah, somewhere in Asia. I knew it was, but she supposedly was looking for the suitcase. There's a suitcase in the movie that the bad guys hide, and it's full of money, and then they never get back to the suitcase by the end of the movie. No spoilers, but so the implication is this suitcase is still out there somewhere, kind of like in the first Jurassic Park, the embryos get buried or whatever, right? So this woman supposedly was looking for this suitcase of money and didn't find it, and ended up like ruining herself, like becoming bankrupt, and spent all of her money looking for it and couldn't find it and killed herself and blah blah blah. But it turns out that's not true. But I was going to use that as an example of, do we have a moral obligation to keep it to the truth? And even movies like Titanic has a lot of inaccuracies. And I remember when I was in the 7th grade, this one girl did a speech on Titanic, and even it's clear in my memory all these years later, all of the stuff she quoted was from the movie. And so, like, her whole idea of that whole story is based off of a James Cameron fabrication, which is really a shame. And there's a lot of historical movies where people think, because of the movie, this is how it went down, but it's not. Like, you ask any Scottish person what they think of Braveheart, and they aren't very flattered, we'll put it that way. Or at least the ones I know hate that movie, for example.
Just briefly, like, we all know Titanic, the actual scripted story in it, of Jack and Rose.
Yeah.
That was all fabricated.
Yeah, but even the facts surrounding it, like the whole...
Yeah.
The thing about them going too fast, wasn't that in I haven't seen the James Cameron one in a long time because I hate that movie, but there was something about, they were trying to beat some record or something, and that's based off of oddly enough, that's something that was based off of the one that they made during Nazi Germany, and then that movie became popular amongst the Allies because it turns out that the director who made it became, in the making of the movie, very anti-Nazi and was killed by the Nazis while he was making it. And then the movie was a flop in Nazi Germany and stuff because nobody wants to watch a disaster movie when your city is being bombed, right? So the movie got a second life after the war by like the British and stuff. They made a British version of the Titanic movie, using footage from the Nazi one, and somehow that element about them going too fast and trying to beat a record, I'm pretty sure came from the original Nazi one, and it was originally a propaganda against the British, but it's a fabrication. And
let's talk about a movie that seems to stick close to the the original story. October Sky, 1999,
good movie
with Jake Gyllenhaal as Homer Hickam. As a young child, he is thrust into a fascination with rockets.
Thrust into it. No pun intended. Yeah.
But anyway, so on the IMDb page here, I'm looking at factual errors, and it's just small things. The flag is flown the wrong way.
Yeah. There goes all of its credibility for me. No, I'm just kidding.
They changed the name of Homer Hickam's father, who is also Homer.
Yeah.
Just so to avoid confusing the audience, right? But I mean, for the most part, it seems, from what I can find online, it's pretty close to a true story.
Yeah.
So, like, where do we draw the line at false?
See, personally, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, individual stories, if it's about like an individual or something like that, I almost feel like you kind of have an obligation to tell the truth, but I don't know. It's like the movies, The Last Samurai, basically is, that movie's not true, but I found it interesting. And so because of that movie, I went and read what actually happened in Japan during that period. So in a lot of ways, there's certain things that just don't work when you're trying to make a movie. It's the same with like comic book adaptations, for example, right? You know, people complain when even the littlest thing is different, but honestly, there's things that work in a comic book that just don't work in a movie. You have to tell a story, right, in the movie, and especially reality. You know, it's kind of the facts and stuff don't always like. It's not a linear. Real life isn't a linear storyline, right? So you gotta you sometimes have to take liberties, and if you make it too much like the real one, it's kind of boring, and you gotta have some people go to the movies to be entertained. They don't necessarily go to learn anything. That's what documentaries are for. If they want to learn something, they'll watch. I'd say they watch the History Network, but the History Network doesn't even have a lot of history shows, but anymore.
The thing with the factual thing, people don't watch people watch movies to see their favorite actor.
Exactly. They want a story to be told to them, basically. And so I personally, I think it's okay if you take some creative license. And like I said, it generates interest. So especially historical events, you watch and you're like, oh, I wonder how much of that is true. And then you look up the real story if you're interested, right? I mean, it is kind of annoying when they get something fundamentally wrong or whatever, but I don't know. It's still if it's like about it, you know, like I love the Battle of Hastings, and so if I wanted to, like tell people about it, I would make a movie about it, and then hopefully people like me, if the movie became popular enough or whatever, it would be like, oh wow, you know a lot about that. What really happened? And then I can just tell them, right?
Okay.
But not everyone's like me. Not people. A lot of people don't like reading books about history because they're very dry. You kind of have to use your imagination to picture it as it's unfolding. A lot of historians are not the best writers per se. They're good about regurgitating facts, but not about making it in a way that. And whereas the movie maker is all about entertaining people. And at the end of the day, that's what people want. They want to be entertained.
So let's go back to another movie that, from what I can read here, seems pretty close to the factual events. The Zodiac movie, another one with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
I'm reading here, and everything that, it says, did suspect Arthur Lee Allen really wear a watch with the Zodiac symbol on it? Yes. And it goes through a bunch of points in the movie that compare to real life, and, a lot of them say yes. So, like, that's, you brought up with the example of a movie about a serial killer.
Yeah.
Now, so, like, this one looks like it...
Yeah, and that movie is more about the investigators and stuff than about the killer, right? It's not like The Summer of Sam or anything like that. Well, I guess technically most of them are about the investigator, but either way, they're not bumbling buffoons, right? They're like in that movie, they're portrayed more as like real people and so on. And it's just about the actual case. It's not about the killer. In fact, even the audience at the end, you're not entirely sure. Just like the detectives, you don't know if he's the guy or not. They leave it open, which I like. And they didn't go into all the detail about because people have a weird an unhealthy, I would say, fascination with things like serial killers. And this movie, I think, probably handled it as good as you can, really. It wasn't about glamorizing the killer. It was about the investigators and how the case affected their lives rather than the killer himself. In fact, like I said, they leave it pretty open, so you don't even know if their main suspect is the killer. Just like they never had conclusive evidence that he was the guy or not either. So you basically are getting the same information that the detectives got, and that's kind of rare for a movie, I would think.
Okay, so now we're gonna go to a movie the opposite way that it doesn't seem to fit.
Yeah.
The recently released Saving Mr. Banks, about the whole Mary Poppins and Disney trying to...
Yeah, even in the previews I was like, I'm pretty sure that this movie is not... It's going to be an entertaining movie, but it doesn't look... the real events, she was so angry about that movie, from what I understand, that she refused to let them have any more movies after that, or make any more movies about Mary Poppins. Not just Disney, any movie studio. And they made a Broadway musical, I guess, but it was only because the guy making it was friends with her and convinced her to let her do it, and it wasn't based on the Disney one. So,
Well, here's some points.
yeah,
So basically, when Walt Disney went to L.A., I guess, to speak with her, they already had the rights to it.
yeah,
And Walt Disney didn't stick around to charm her, as it shows in the movie.
yeah,
After the film was released, like after it was premiered, apparently Travers did not watch the film for 20 years.
yeah.
And in the movie, it says she was alone in the world, which isn't true.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like, especially when the movie is like, it says here the central conceit of the film is pretty much fictionalized.
And keep in mind, the movie's made by Walt Disney Corporation. So,
Yeah.
of course, they're not going to be like, boy, that Walt Disney sure was a bastard. No, they're not going to do that.
The funny thing is, I've heard someone mention Walt Disney was a chain smoker.
Oh, yeah,
But-
he died of a stroke.
But Disney has an internal policy that they will not show smoking on screen.
Yeah.
So Walt Disney is never depicted with a cigarette in hand or anything like
Unless,
that, right?
yeah, if and also there's evidence to suggest he may have been a fascist and stuff too. So Walt Disney's a very complicated man. He's not completely evil, but he's not as good as
we're not getting into
that's
into-
probably not this.
into the history of
At
Walt
least
Disney.
not in this.
But
episode.
it's just funny because Disney has this policy of not showing smoking on screen because
Yeah.
most of their audience is younger children,
and
right?
two, because he died mainly because he was a chain smoker. That's what. That's probably why he had the stroke and everything that killed him. So I can understand why they're like, yeah, we don't want this happening again.
So
It's a very responsible thing for them to do. I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily good that if they make it look like he never smoked, like if they had ashtrays on his desk with like cigarettes crushed into it and they didn't actually show him smoking, but it's implied if you're paying attention that those are his cigarettes, and yeah, but I can it's a slippery slope with things like that, right?
yeah,
I can understand why they would be trepidatious or whatever about it.
for sure. So what other movies do you have in mind that you think strayed far from the film? Or
Well, I mentioned Braveheart earlier, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about that. I know, like I said, I got one guy. He's like one of my friends. His mom immigrated from Scotland to Canada, so he's like a first generation. Well, I mean, his father was from Canada, but he's very Scottish Canadian. And I know he's going to be listening to this podcast. And if we do this show about this topic and I don't mention that Braveheart was inaccurate, he probably will blow a gasket. Because that movie is like everybody I know that's Scottish, especially obviously ones that are familiar with the William Wallace story, hate the Mel Gibson one because it's completely wrong. And to give you the first time I ever heard about this, I was reading an article, and it was a film review, but written by a historian instead of a film critic, which I thought was interesting, which is why I read it to begin with. But it was basically it was a woman, and she was saying that the first thing in the movie that throws her off is the garb that they're wearing, because the kilts that they have are not only, they're from a later period for one thing, and they're wearing them completely wrong. So she used the analogy of, to show how much it threw her, imagine if you're watching a movie about the American Revolutionary War, where the British had the redcoats and George Washington and all that, right? And the British are portrayed wearing modern business suits and they're on backwards, right? It's like completely bizarre.
Yeah.
If you know what to look for, that they're wearing them completely wrong, and they're like 300 years or whatever before they were that particular garb even existed, right? So it's just, and then of course the whole thing about the British sleeping with the wife on the, that didn't happen. At least not in Scotland, and not during that time. That's not what got William Wallace didn't start his rebellion because they slept with his wife or tried to rape his wife. It was other things. It was more, I don't know, bureaucratic and stuff at the beginning. And he certainly didn't yell freedom as they ripped his guts out in real life and all this. So there's a lot of things in that movie that they don't like. I personally, if I ever get to be a filmmaker, one of my little pet dream projects or whatever that I wouldn't mind doing someday would be an accurate story of William Wallace, because the real story is pretty interesting as well.
Yeah. Okay. Just what I find really funny here. So you remember the movie The Hurricane?
Yeah.
Reuben Carter, the boxer, wrongfully convicted of murder.
Yeah.
Well, there's a scene in the film where Carter completely beats the crap out of this white boxer.
Yeah.
Named Joey Giardello, and they portray the judges as being blatantly racist and giving the fight to Giardello.
Yeah, because in the fight I saw, the Hurricane. Yeah, I remember that scene.
Yeah. Anyways, but the reality is that Carter lost the fight so badly that Giardello sued the filmmakers over the scene and received a settlement out of it.
Yeah.
So I know they're just setting.
They're trying to show that there was an underlying racism, but yeah.
In the time, which is true.
Yeah, everybody knows that. I don't know.
But why do they have to change the facts to represent that?
Yeah, I know. I'm sure there were actual fights that were dubious. I guess just because that was a famous fight. I'm not sure why they would do that. And
just going back to the Saving Mr. Banks.
Right.
You mentioned that P.L. Travers did not like the movie coming out. She died in '96, so maybe it was her family that didn't enjoy it or something.
No, I didn't mean she didn't. I wasn't talking about Saving Mrs. Banks. I was talking about the actual Mary Poppins movie. She hated the movie.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
Okay.
No, obviously she couldn't have seen that.
Yeah.
That movie just came out. And
I got you.
Yeah, she was already dead, obviously. Like, well, what was it, last year that movie came out?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't get it at the theater that I work at, but yeah.
So, yeah, okay. Just
Excuse me.
So, basically, we're saying, movies, if they're depicting real people,
chances are you always have to take it with a grain of salt. You always just have to never go by what the movies tells you. You should watch these movies, be entertained, and then if you really want to know the real story, you should actually do some research afterwards, like I do. Just because, and a lot of times you find really interesting stuff out about it. So really, like, I don't know, it's cool. It's like you can kind of appreciate the filmmakers. If the movie is good, even better, and you don't mind that it's not. I'm speaking personally, of course. This is all based on my own opinion, but as long as it's not a huge, like Inglourious Bastards when they killed Hitler in a French movie theater, obviously things like that are...
no one ever stated Inglourious Bastards was a true story, though.
Apparently that movie is supposed to be taking place in a parallel universe, which is, well, I mean, obviously, not just apparently, it has to be, because, like...
Yeah, but nobody ever touted that as a true story, right?
In fact, I almost think there's the movie Valkyrie, which is somewhat accurate to the real events about the German resistance in World War II.
Okay, so when you say fairly accurate, IMDb says there's 22 factual errors.
Yeah, but there's nothing significant, is there?
Yeah, there's a few things. At one point, one of the, if this is the correct movie I'm thinking about, one of the generals or something had to be 11 years old. No, sorry, that was a different movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say because
It was. Let's see. They're all pretty lengthy descriptions.
Spectacles. Not wearing them. Yeah, okay, so this one's about him not wearing glasses and so on. Yeah. So it's those, they're really wordy, but they're like, Hitler wore glasses during this period. How dare they show him de-spectacled? Like, okay. But as far as like, however he made his journey. Okay, yeah, he used the wrong plane in one part, but there's so few actual German planes from World War II left.
It's called special effects, Adam. Special effects.
Either way, though, these are all the factual errors are things like his tie clip is on wrong. It's not like... But anyway, sorry, there's, in the audio commentary for Valkyrie, before I forget what I was going to say originally, from what Tom Cruise and Bryan Singer are doing the audio commentary, and they recount a story of they were at the premiere and Chris Rock and Quentin Tarantino approached them and were like, oh, well, this is a good movie and everything, but, you should have had them get Hitler in the end. And then Tom Cruise and Bryan Singer was like, what? You can't do that. That's not what happened. And then just a few years later, Inglourious Bastards comes out, and they get Hitler in the end. So I'm almost wondering if Tarantino didn't get the idea at the premiere of Valkyrie, because he's like, it's a great movie and good heist movie and everything, but you should have had them succeed. But if they succeeded, they would have killed Hitler and ended the war, and we know that's not what happened. So, I don't know, that's kind of... Yeah, anyway, it's a little tidbit that I found amusing.
Yeah, no, these factuals don't seem to be
as I was reading it, because I was like, I'm pretty sure, that from what I understand...
They don't seem to be much affecting, like, changing the storyline, just,
little things. Like, one of them was that he went on a different kind of airplane when he arrived at the Wolseley and stuff, which...
And different uniforms that they should and shouldn't be wearing, stuff like that. So it's...
I'm sure the part where he's listening to... Die Valkyr, which is the Valkyrie record when the bombing takes place, and then that gives him the idea. I'm sure that was probably made up, but good scene though. But yeah, like things like that, I wouldn't be surprised. But as far as actually, Colonel Stauffenberg's grandson, Tom Cruise's character's grandson, had a brief cameo in the movie and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at pictures of the actual guy versus pictures of Tom Cruise, like, next to each other, they look exactly alike. Yeah. It's crazy. He looked just like Tom Cruise.
Now, okay, speaking of that, obviously, it shouldn't matter too much, but does Hollywood have an obligation to find actors that kind of resemble? Because one movie that I wouldn't say is entirely factual is Argo. Especially if you're a Canadian, you're a little bit.
They were basically like, "Oh, Canada got all the credit for our work, but because it was a secret ops, it's like, no, Canada actually did do a lot in that Iranian thing."
But regardless, so
thanks a lot.
Well, regardless, the story doesn't. But if you look at the pictures of the actors,
some of them, oh my gosh, you're not kidding.
The actors and the people who play them, and the real life people, they're pretty well done. They're pretty well, like,
oh my gosh, that is insane.
Yeah, so if you go to historyversushollywood.com,
actually, Ben Affleck is the only one that doesn't look like his character, pretty much.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like John Goodman character playing John Chambers, I mean, John Goodman's a little bit more robust. Saying it nicely, but everyone's pretty close, and even in those, it doesn't show Victor Garber playing Ken Taylor, and I mean that's they're pretty close.
The Ken Taylor guy almost looks like Warren Beatty. He would have been a good choice for that. I mean, he's getting older, but this guy was kind of...
But yeah, so, like, should Hollywood find actors that look like their real-life counterparts?
No. I mean, you can always make them look somewhat like the real ones. in with makeup and stuff. But if you have a bad actor, but that looks like the real,
So they should look for like top-notch actors.
Now,
before...
yeah, if I was a director, I would look for good actors rather than, and if they're really good, just with their like, I don't know. There's this whole thing about like doing an impression versus a new character for like actors when they're portraying real people, and like even like a musical biopic like Ray or like Walk the Line or whatever, right? Do you use the music that the actual people used? So whenever they're singing, they're lip syncing, or do you use them actually singing it? Like it's like that sort of idea, right?
Yeah.
I think it depends on the director.
Yeah,
and it's their call. But personally, I think you just take an existing actor or actress and you make them look as much like the person as you can. And if they're a good actor, then who cares? I mean, if they're playing somebody very famous, obviously, that everybody knows what they look like, that's different, right? Like, well, like, okay, Kate Blanchett does not look anything like, oh, shoot, I'm just blanking here. Audrey, Hepburn, yeah, she doesn't, in The Aviator.
Yeah.
Right? She plays her, she sounds just like her, and she's got all the gestures and everything, but her face, she does not look like her at all. But that doesn't matter because, you still know who it's supposed to be, right? And she does a good enough job. Like, you feel like that's what she actually was like, right? Yeah. So, if they'd have got an actress that just was like eye candy, that looked like Audrey Hepburn, but didn't necessarily know how to act like Audrey Hepburn, it wouldn't have been as good, I don't think, and it wouldn't have gotten through what the movie was trying to get through.
Okay, so we've talked about the stories. Should Hollywood follow the real story? We've talked about should Hollywood find actors that look the same.
Yeah.
Now, here's another one: lazy filmmaking. Or just oversight. So, I heard a story recently going back to Titanic, the James Cameron one. So the cars that they showed in the hold beneath the ship were cars that weren't available at that time. So, like, should these directors or the movie companies, should they do their research and make sure that all the props and everything like that is time specific and time correct, compared to, say, okay, it's a movie set in 1985, and they have a model of watch that wasn't invented until 1987 or released. So, like, is that lazy filmmaking, or is that nitpicking?
I don't know. See, it's weird because I'm taking both points of view simultaneously. On the one hand, I love watching movies and being like, haha, they have, like, okay, I'm obsessed with cars. In fact, that's probably, ever since I was basically in the womb, probably, I don't know, I've been kind of, my grandfather started selling cars in the 40s, and so, growing up, he had a bunch of garages and stuff, and then my uncles and stuff, started their own car dealerships and that. And so, like, cars are in my blood kind of thing, right? And then, so from an early age, cars, any guy in our family, cars are important. And then from there, I became interested in anything that was, like, older, not just old cars. So somebody like me, I watch Back to the Future, and they're in 1955, and in the background I can see, like, a 1957 General Motors bread truck in the background, and I find it hilarious. But at the same time, there's they're not making the movie just for people like me that nitpick it. And as long as it doesn't take you out of the story, if you're if you're doing a movie about the Crusades and then Saladin's watch starts beeping and lighting up, then then we have an issue. But if it's like Titanic, the fact that they actually got real cars that were almost 100 years old by that point in the movie, like, I don't really mind. I mean, they could have, a movie with that budget, you could have your props guy easily make, especially because the real cars were handmade back then anyway. You could have got a Daimler Mercedes, one of the old like late 1800s models or whatever, in the movie, he could have made one easily because they were very basic, simple. Like a props master, a set builder could make one. It doesn't have to run. It just has to sit there, and then they have sex in it, basically, right? So they could have, if they had done the research done, and I guess that would be. But then again, a movie like Titanic, there's so much on their mind anyway that they have to think about logistics, like how are they going to shoot it.
But yeah,
they don't really have time to go back for every single prop and get it right.
They have a section of people that's their job.
Continuity,
to get not even continuity, to get time specific props and stuff like that. Like the art department, like. To me, I mean, maybe I'm being nitpicky, but to me, that's Lizzie. You know, your movie is set in say 1955. Oh, right. But you know what? This is a 1957 car. Nobody will notice.
Yeah,
why don't you try and get a 1955?
I was a little kid and I noticed that there were cars from after 1955 in the 50 scenes, and but for me, I don't know. So if I'm in a bad mood, I guess it bothers me, but I kind of find it entertaining. It's almost like Easter eggs. Like I heard that
lazy Easter eggs.
Well, yeah, but then you have didn't Sam Raimi I'm pretty sure did a Western, and I've heard this. You know his classic 88 Oldsmobile 88 that was from like 1974, the yellow one. He has in the Evil Dead movies, he has it in Spider-Man. It's a car that Uncle Ben gets like carjacked. It's like his signature. He puts this Oldsmobile in all of his movies, Sam Raimi. And apparently there's a Western he did, and parallel parked way down the street, out of focus. He just parked the car. And I think that, but that's like, he purposely did that.
That's purposely. And I don't think the directors or art department
it's one of those
puts a 57 car in a 50s movie.
Especially in the 80s when there was a lot more cars from 55 and before than there are now. Because it was only like 30 years prior. Like there's cars from the 80s that you still see driving around. And that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, that just about wraps it up for today. If you want to follow any new episodes or anything like that, check us out on Podbean. And, like the Facebook page for the Connoisseur. So it's facebook.com/Connoisseur Web Show.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Connoisseur is spelled Connoisseur, just in case, because a lot of people have difficulty spelling that.
I'm sure they'd figure it out.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks
autocorrect or whatever.
Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll be back next week with another action-packed, thrilling adventure. I'm sure.
Explosions. I don't know.
Thanks for listening, guys.